The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy. Hundreds of alien species sat in their assigned seats, their voices creating a strange mix of sounds that the universal translators worked hard to make sense of. At the center of the Great Hall, Ambassador of the Hegemony stood tall on his 6 legs, his purple skin gleaming under the bright lights. "Members of the Council," his voice boomed through the hall, "we face a new situation. Another primitive species has discovered faster-than-light travel." Quiet murmurs filled the air. New species were always a concern for the established powers. Some brought useful resources, others brought problems. All needed to be controlled. "These creatures call themselves humans," continued, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd. "They come from a small yellow star they call Sol. Our scouts report that they have only recently learned to split atoms and have barely left their home world's gravity well." A laugh came from the hegemony section. Admiral N's military advisor stood up. His massive frame was covered in ceremonial armor that clinked as he moved. "The reports are amusing," N said with a sneer. "These humans still use chemical rockets for most of their space travel. Their largest ships are barely 300 meters long. They fight wars on their planet's surface using metal tubes that throw small pieces of metal at each other." More laughter filled the hall. The idea of surface warfare seemed backward to species that had been fighting in space for thousands of years. "Their technology is crude," added. "They have discovered antimatter, but they use it in the most basic way possible. Their computer systems are digital instead of quantum. They do not even have proper energy shields." In the far corner of the hall, Captain Sarah of the Terran Diplomatic Corps listened to every word. She sat alone in the visitors section, the only human in a room full of aliens who clearly thought very little of her species. Her dark blue uniform looked simple compared to the elaborate clothing worn by the other ambassadors. Sarah kept her face calm, but inside she felt anger building. The aliens spoke about humanity like they were children playing with toys. They had no idea what humans were really capable of. "What do these humans want?" asked Ambassador of the Trade Federation. Her snake-like body curved elegantly as she spoke. "The same thing they all want," replied. "They request membership in the Galactic Trade Confederation. They wish to establish colonies beyond their home system. They want access to our trade routes and technology." "And in return?" asked, though everyone already knew the answer. "They offer their resources, their labor, and their obedience to the established order," said, "as all new species must." This was how it always worked. When a species discovered FTL travel, they were given a choice. Join the Confederation as a junior member, pay tribute to the established powers, and follow the rules set by species who had been in space for, or face the consequences. The consequences were never pleasant. "I recommend we offer them standard probationary status," continued. 25 years of tribute payments, 75% of their industrial output, limited to 10 colony worlds, military forces restricted to system defense only. Sarah felt her jaw tight. 75% tribute was criminal. It would keep humanity poor and dependent for generations. But she also knew that refusing would bring the hegemony's war fleets to Earth's doorstep. "The human representative may speak," said, gesturing toward Sarah with one of his long arms. Sarah stood up slowly and walked to the center of the hall. Every alien eye followed her movements. She was smaller than most of them, her brown skin and black hair marking her as clearly different from any species they had encountered before. "Honored Council," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the situation. "Humanity appreciates the Confederation's offer of membership. We understand the terms and accept probationary status." She paused, looking around the hall. "However, I must note that the tribute requirements will severely limit our ability to develop our colonies and contribute meaningfully to galactic trade." A few aliens made sounds that the translator, identified as amusement. New species always find the terms difficult, replied with what might have been a smile on his alien features. But they ensure stability. The galaxy has been peaceful under the current system for over 3,000 years. Sarah wanted to point out that it was peaceful only for the strong species. The weak ones lived in fear, never allowed to grow beyond their assigned limits. But she bit her tongue. Earth needed time. "There is one more thing," Admiral N said, his voice carrying a warning tone. "These humans must understand that their military activities are strictly limited. Any ship larger than escort class will be considered a threat to galactic peace." "Our current fleet consists mainly of frigates and destroyers," Sarah replied. "We have no intention of building large military vessels." This was technically true. Humanity's current fleet was small and outdated by galactic standards. What Sarah did not mention was the classified reports sitting on desks back on Earth, reports that detailed plans for ship designs unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Excellent," said. "Then we have an agreement. Humanity will receive probationary membership status. Tribute payments will begin immediately. Welcome to the galactic community." The session ended with formal ceremonies and document signings. Sarah went through the motions, shaking hands and tentacles with various ambassadors who offered polite but condescending congratulations. As she left the Great Hall, Sarah activated her personal communicator. A small hologram of President appeared above the device. "How did it go?" the President asked. "As expected," Sarah replied quietly. "They think we're primitive and harmless. They want 75% tribute and restrictions on our military development." "And you agreed?" "I had to, but you should see how they talk about us. Like we're animals that just learned to use tools. They have no respect for what humanity might become." President nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to show them, but carefully. We need time to build our strength." "How long?" Sarah asked. "The Hurricane Project will be complete in 18 months. After that, the galaxy will see what humans are really capable of." Sarah looked back at the Crystal Dome where alien representatives were already discussing how to divide up humanity's tribute payments. They had no idea what was coming. 18 months, she repeated. "I hope that's enough time." The communication ended, and Sarah walked toward her small ship. Behind her, the aliens continued their discussions about the species to join their galactic order. They were confident that humanity would follow the same path as hundreds of other species before them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Trade Confederation. The tribute payments flowed regularly from Earth to the various alien powers, and human colonies slowly expanded into nearby star systems. Most galactic citizens had already forgotten about the newcomer species from Sol. The colony's ship New Horizon drifted peacefully through space in the sector, its massive hull carrying 50,000 human civilians toward their new home. Families slept in cryogenic pods, while their children dreamed of the green world that waited for them. Scientists worked in laboratories, preparing terraforming equipment that would turn a dead planet into humanity's garden. Captain Roberto Martinez stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past the viewports. After 20 years in the merchant fleet, this was his proudest moment. He was not just moving cargo from one place to another. He was carrying the future of humanity itself. "Captain, we have a contact," called out Navigator Susan Park from her station. "Large vessel approaching from the starboard side." Martinez frowned. The sector was supposed to be neutral space, free from military patrols. "Can you identify it?" "Checking the database now," Park replied, her fingers dancing across her controls. A few seconds later, her face went pale. "Sir, it's a hegemony dreadnought, the Eternal Dominion." The mood on the bridge changed instantly. Every human had heard stories about hegemony warships. They were massive, heavily armed and crewed by aliens who considered most other species to be inferior creatures. "Open a communication channel," Martinez ordered. "Maybe they're just passing through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien warship. Commander Ill sat in his command chair, his reptilian features twisted into what might have been amusement. His scaled skin was dark green, and his yellow eyes studied the human bridge with obvious contempt. "Human vessel," Ill spoke, his voice translated into English by the ship systems. "You are in violation of hegemony space regulations." Martinez felt confusion and fear in equal measure. "Commander, this is neutral space according to all star charts. We have proper transit permits from the Confederation." Ill made a sound that the translator identified as laughter. "Permits are meaningless without proper tribute. You owe the hegemony a transit tax for passage through this sector." "What kind of tax?" Martinez asked, though he already suspected he would not like the answer. 90% of your ship's cargo and technology," Ill replied casually. "Standard rate for vessels that fail to pay in advance." The bridge fell silent. 90% would mean abandoning almost everything they carried. The terraforming equipment, the medical supplies, the food and tools needed to establish a new colony. Without those things, the 50,000 civilians would face starvation on an empty world. "Commander, that's impossible," Martinez said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Those supplies are vital for the survival of our colonists. The Confederation Treaty clearly states that civilian vessels in neutral space are protected from such demands." Ill's expression changed from amusement to annoyance. "The treaty is a piece of paper. Hegemony ships enforce real law in real space. You have two choices, human: pay the tax or face the consequences." Martinez looked around his bridge. His crew members stared back at him with a mixture of fear and determination. Behind them, in the vast cargo holds and passenger sections, 50,000 human beings trusted him to keep them safe. "We cannot comply with your demand," Martinez said finally. "We are a peaceful civilian vessel. We claim protection under galactic law." For a moment, Ill said nothing. Then he leaned forward in his chair, his yellow eyes glowing with something that looked like pleasure. "Galactic law protects those with the strength to enforce it," the alien commander said. "Let me show you how strength works." The communication channel closed. Alarms immediately began screaming throughout the New Horizon as the ship's sensors detected weapons locked from the dreadnought. "All hands brace for impact," Martinez shouted into the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill." The Eternal Dominion opened fire without warning. Massive energy beams struck the two escort frigates that traveled with the colony ship. The human warships, barely 200 meters long, simply vanished in flashes of white light. 50 brave men and women died in an instant, their ships torn apart by weapons designed to destroy much larger targets. The New Horizon shuddered as secondary weapons struck its hull. The colony ship was not built for war. Its shields were designed to protect against space debris and radiation, not military-grade energy weapons. Warning lights flashed red throughout the ship as systems failed one by one. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, shouted engineer from her station. "We're losing atmosphere." Martinez gripped his command chair as the ship shook again. Through the viewports, he could see pieces of his ship spinning away into space. Each piece might contain families, children, people who had given up everything for a chance at a new life. "Emergency bulkheads are sealing," continued, "but we've lost contact with sections 15 through 20. Martinez did the math in his head. Sections 15 through 20 housed nearly 8,000 people. If the bulkheads had not sealed in time, those sections would now be open to vacuum. "Get me a damage report," Martinez ordered, though he could already see the destruction on his screens. The Eternal Dominion had stopped firing, but it maintained its position near the crippled colony ship. Another communication request appeared on Martinez's screen. "You see how this works," Il said when the channel opened. His reptilian features showed no emotion at the death and destruction he had caused. "Strength makes law. Now will you pay the proper tribute?" Martinez stared at the alien commander. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. In the damaged sections of the ship, rescue teams worked desperately to save survivors from the vacuum of space. "You just killed thousands of innocent people," Martinez said quietly. "Families, children, they never harmed anyone." "They failed to pay proper respect to their superiors," Il replied. "This is what happens to those who do not understand their place in the galaxy." The alien commander leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the conversation. "I will broadcast this incident throughout hegemony space. Let it serve as a lesson to other species about the price of defiance." Martinez felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. These aliens saw humans as nothing more than animals to be controlled. They felt no guilt about murdering innocent people. They were actually proud of it. "We will pay your tribute," Martinez said through gritted teeth. "Excellent," Il replied. "Begin transferring 90% of your cargo immediately. And human captain, remember this lesson. Your species exists only because we allow it." Over the next 6 hours, human crew members worked to transfer their precious cargo to the hegemony dreadnought. Medical supplies, farming equipment, terraforming machines, even personal belongings of the colonists. Everything that had been meant to build a new world now filled the cargo holds of their attackers. When the transfer was complete, the Eternal Dominion departed without another word. The New Horizon drifted in space, its hull and its cargo holds empty. 8,312 people had died in the attack. Another 1,500 were injured. Captain Martinez sent an emergency message to Earth, detailing everything that had happened. The response came back within days. The Galactic Council offered their deepest condolences for the unfortunate incident and reminded humanity that such things could be avoided by paying proper tribute in advance. The message was clear. The aliens saw the massacre not as a crime, but as a business expense. On Earth, President read Martinez's report in her office late at night. The list of the dead went on for pages. Children, teachers, doctors, engineers, farmers, people who had only wanted to build a better life among the stars. She activated her secure communication system and spoke to a small group of men and women whose faces appeared on her screen. "The Hurricane Project is now our highest priority," she said quietly. "I want the first ship ready within a year, and I want it to be everything we promised it would be." Admiral, director of the classified project, nodded grimly. "Ma'am, when we're finished, the galaxy will learn that humanity is not a species to be trifled with." "Good," replied, "because apparently the only language these aliens understand is force, and we're going to speak it fluently." The communication ended, and the president sat alone in her office, reading the names of the dead. Outside her window, the lights of Earth glittered in the darkness, unaware that their peaceful future had just been decided by the death of innocents in the cold vacuum of space. 6 months after the New Horizon massacre, long-range sensors throughout the galaxy detected something unprecedented. A massive energy signature was moving out of the Sol system, larger than any ship in the known databases. The readings were so strange that most alien commanders assumed their equipment was malfunctioning. Admiral stood on the bridge of the TSS Tempest, humanity's first Hurricane-class warship, watching the stars stream past the forward viewport. After 30 years in the Earth Defense Fleet, he had thought he understood what a warship should look like. The Tempest had changed his mind completely. The ship stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, but it did not look like the massive flying fortresses that other species built. Where alien dreadnoughts were thick and heavily armored, the Tempest was sleek and predatory. Its black hull curved and flowed like something that had been grown rather than built, designed to slip through space like a shark through water. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from Hegemony Command," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. "They're demanding we identify ourselves and state our intentions." Smiled grimly, "Put them through." The face of Admiral N appeared on the main screen, his purple features twisted with annoyance. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was filled with alien officers who looked nervous and confused. "Human vessel," N began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who was used to being obeyed. "You are operating a ship class not registered with Confederation authorities. This is a violation of your probationary status." "Admiral N," replied politely, "I am Admiral of the Terran Defense Fleet. This is the TSS Tempest. We are operating under full authority of the human government." "Impossible," N snapped. "The treaty forbids your species from building ships larger than escort class. That vessel clearly exceeds those limits." Looked around his bridge at the human officers who worked quietly at their stations. Unlike the elaborate command centers of alien warships, the Tempest's bridge was clean and efficient. Every surface had a purpose. Every system had been designed for maximum effectiveness. "The treaty forbids us from building ships using traditional alien designs," corrected. "It says nothing about human innovations." This was technically true. When the Confederation had written the restrictions on human military development, they had assumed that all species would follow the same basic patterns. Massive ships with thick armor and powerful shields, designed to trade heavy blows at long range. They had never imagined that humans might approach warfare completely differently. The Tempest was the result of everything humanity had learned about fighting during their long and bloody history on Earth. While alien species had evolved in the calm environment of space, humans had learned warfare in the crushing gravity wells of planets, where speed and agility mattered more than raw strength. "What is your destination?" N demanded. "We are traveling to Hegemony Space," replied calmly. "We have business with the crew of the Eternal Dominion." The alien admiral's expression changed from annoyance to anger. "That ship is under the protection of the Hegemony fleet. Any attack on our vessels will be considered an act of war." "Commander Ill murdered over 8,000 human civilians," said, his voice becoming cold. "He broadcast the massacre as entertainment. We demand that he and his crew be surrendered for trial under galactic law." N laughed, a harsh sound that the translators struggled to convert. "Galactic law applies to those strong enough to enforce it. Your species learned that lesson 6 months ago. Now you will learn it again." The communication channel closed, turned to his tactical officer. "Commander Santos, what do we have on long-range sensors?" "The Hegemony Third Fleet is moving to intercept us at the Rigel system," Santos replied. 200 ships, including 5 dreadnoughts. They're forming a standard battle line." Nodded. The aliens were following the same tactics they had used for thousands of years. Form a wall of ships, overlap their shields, and pound the enemy with concentrated firepower until they surrendered or died. "Estimated time to contact?" 18 hours at current speed, Santos answered. Walked to the center of his bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed the enemy fleet arrangement. Each red dot represented an alien warship, most of them larger than the Tempest. By the old rules of space combat, the humans were outnumbered but the Tempest did not fight by the old rules. "All stations begin final preparations," announced. "Run Level 1 diagnostics on all weapons systems. I want the gravitational drives online and ready. Engineering, how are our storm torpedoes?" "All tubes loaded and ready, Admiral," came the reply from Chief Engineer. "The new gravitational warheads tested perfectly." Smiled. The storm torpedoes were humanity's answer to the heavy shields that protected alien warships. Instead of trying to blast through energy barriers with brute force, the torpedoes created localized gravitational anomalies that crushed ships from the inside out. "Admiral," called out Navigator Johnson, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." The face of President appeared on a secondary screen. Behind her, could see the flags of all Earth's nations hanging in the presidential office. She said quietly, "The entire world is watching. Every news service, every communication network. This will be humanity's first real test against the aliens." "Understood, Madam President," replied. "We won't let you down." "I know you won't. But remember what we discussed. This isn't just about revenge for the New Horizon. This is about showing the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around anymore." The communication ended and returned his attention to the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was still moving into position, confident that their superior numbers would guarantee victory. They had no idea what they were about to face. The Tempest was not just a larger version of existing human ships. It represented a completely new approach to space warfare, designed by people who had learned to fight in an environment where the slightest mistake meant death. While alien species built their warships like medieval castles, humans had built theirs like a force of nature. The ship's primary weapons were fusion lance arrays that could channel the energy of stellar cores into coherent beams of destruction. Its armor was not thick metal plating, but reactive materials that could redirect incoming energy in unexpected directions. Most importantly, the Tempest was fast. Alien dreadnoughts were powerful, but they moved like flying mountains. The Hurricane class could dance through space at angles and speeds that would tear apart conventional ships. "All crew, this is the Admiral," announced over the ship's internal communication system. "In 12 hours, we will engage the enemy fleet that murdered the civilians of the New Horizon. They think that humans are weak and cowardly. They think that we will run away when faced with superior numbers." He paused, looking around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had trained for years to reach this moment. They knew that the entire future of humanity might depend on what happened in the next day. "They are about to learn that they know nothing about the human spirit," continued. "For 8,000 years, our species has fought wars that would have destroyed other civilizations. We have survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and every other disaster that nature could throw at us. And we have always come back stronger." Throughout the ship, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. In the weapons bays, technicians made final adjustments to the storm torpedoes. In engineering, specialists monitored the gravitational drives that would allow the Tempest to move in ways that alien ships could not follow. "The aliens measure strength by the size of their ships and the thickness of their armor," concluded. "Today, they will learn that real strength comes from the courage to stand up to bullies and the skill to make them pay for their crimes." The Tempest continued its journey toward the Rigel system, where the hegemony fleet waited. Behind it, Earth held its breath. Ahead of it, 200 alien warships prepared for what they expected to be an easy victory. Neither side knew that in 18 hours, the galaxy would witness the birth of a new age of warfare. An age where humanity would show the stars that the species from the small blue planet was not to be underestimated. The storm was coming, and it carried the fury of an entire world. The Rigel system blazed with the light of 200 hegemony warships arranged in perfect battle formation. Admiral N stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Retribution, watching the human vessel approach on the tactical display. The single green dot moved steadily toward his fleet like an insect flying toward a spider's web. "Their courage is admirable," N said to his officers, his voice filled with condescending amusement. "But courage cannot overcome mathematics. One ship against 200 is not a battle, it is an execution." Around him, alien officers worked at their stations with relaxed confidence. They had fought dozens of species over the centuries. The pattern was always the same. The new species would resist for a while, then submit when they realized the hopelessness of their situation. "Admiral, the human ship is increasing speed," reported Tactical Officer. "It's moving faster than our projections indicated possible." N frowned. His intelligence reports had suggested that the mysterious human vessel was large but slow, built like an oversized version of their existing ships. "How fast?" "0.7 light speed, sir, and still accelerating." That was impossible. No ship that size should be able to move so quickly. N studied the sensor readings more carefully, noting the strange energy signatures coming from the approaching vessel. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let's see if these humans want to surrender before we destroy them." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human warship. Admiral sat calmly in his command chair, surrounded by officers who showed no sign of fear despite being outnumbered 200 to 1. "Human Commander," N began, "you are badly outmatched. Surrender now and I will allow your crew to live as prisoners. Continue this foolish attack and you will all die pointlessly." Looked directly into the camera, his eyes cold and determined. "Admiral N, you and your fleet are harboring war criminals responsible for the murder of innocent civilians. Surrender Commander Ill and his crew for trial, and we will allow the rest of your ships to withdraw." N burst into laughter. The idea that a single human ship would demand the surrender of an entire hegemony fleet was so absurd that several of his bridge officers joined in the amusement. "You are either very brave or very stupid," N said when the laughter died down. "Perhaps both. Very well, human. Come and die with honor if such a thing is possible for your primitive species." The communication ended. N turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, weapons free, target that vessel and destroy it completely. I want nothing left but atoms." Throughout the hegemony fleet, 200 warships powered up their weapons. Energy readings spiked as massive guns charged with enough power to vaporize cities. The aliens had arranged themselves in a classic formation, with the largest dreadnoughts in the center and smaller ships forming protective screens on the flanks. It was a formation that had worked perfectly for 3,000 years. The Tempest entered weapons range, moving at nearly the speed of light. Every hegemony ship fired at once, filling space with energy beams and missile swarms. The concentrated firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. None of it hit the target. At the last possible moment, the human warship did something that no alien commander had ever seen before. Instead of continuing in a straight line or making a simple course change, it twisted sideways in a way that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "How is that possible?" gasped, staring at his instruments. "No ship can maneuver like that at those speeds." And watched in stunned silence as the human vessel performed impossible turns and loops, dancing through the wall of weapons fire like it was flying through empty space. The ship moved in 3 dimensions at once, treating the battle like one of the atmospheric dogfights that humans had once fought in Earth skis. "All ships adjust targeting," N shouted, "compensate for their movements." But the hegemony gunners could not compensate for something they had never encountered. Their targeting computers were designed to track ships that moved in predictable patterns. The Tempest flew like a creature that had never learned the proper way space battles were supposed to work. As it danced through the enemy formation, the human warship opened fire. The fusion lance arrays that ran along the Tempest's hull came alive with stellar fire. Beams of energy that burned at the temperature of star cores reached out across space and touched the hulls of alien warships. The results were catastrophic. Hegemony shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, offered no protection against the fusion lances. The energy passed through their defenses like they did not exist, striking armor plating with the force of solar flares. Ship after ship simply came apart, their hulls vaporized by weapons that channeled the power of creation itself. "Impossible," En screamed as he watched a dozen of his ships die in the first exchange. "Nothing can penetrate our shields that easily." But the fusion lances were not the worst of it. As the Tempest continued its deadly dance through the alien formation, it began launching storm torpedoes from concealed tubes along its hull. The torpedoes looked like normal missiles at first, and the hegemony point defense systems targeted them automatically. But when the defensive fire struck the incoming weapons, something strange happened. Instead of exploding, the torpedoes activated. Each one created a localized gravitational anomaly, a tiny black hole that lasted for just a few seconds. But those seconds were enough. The gravitational fields reached out and grabbed nearby ships, crushing them inward like an invisible fist. The cruiser Dominant Glory was caught by 3 torpedo strikes at once. The ship's hull buckled and twisted as gravitational forces compressed it from multiple directions. In less than 10 seconds, a vessel that had patrolled space for over a century was reduced to a ball of compacted metal and screaming crew. "Sir, we need to retreat," shouted over the alarms that were now screaming throughout the flagship. "We've lost 30 ships in the first 5 minutes." "No retreat," En roared. "All ships close formation, concentrate fire on that human vessel." But the order was a mistake. By bunching his ships together, En made the storm torpedoes even more effective. Each gravitational anomaly could now damage multiple ships at once. The human vessel seemed to be everywhere at once, appearing behind one group of ships, destroying them, then vanishing and reappearing somewhere else in the formation. It moved like a ghost, like a nightmare, like something that existed outside the normal rules of space and time. The dreadnought Eternal Dominion, the ship that had massacred the colonists of the New Horizon, tried to escape the carnage. Commander Ill sat on his bridge watching his fleet die around him, his reptilian features twisted with terror. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. "One ship cannot do this, it cannot." But the Tempest found him anyway. Admiral watched the alien ship appear on his forward screen and felt a cold satisfaction. This was the vessel that had murdered innocent humans. This was the crew that had laughed as children died in the vacuum of space. "Target the Eternal Dominion," ordered quietly. "Full lance array, maximum power." The fusion lances focused their fire on the alien dreadnought's hull. For a moment, the ship's shields held against the stellar fire. Then they collapsed, and the energy reached the armor beneath. Commander Ill had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship came apart around him. The hull melted like ice in a furnace. The atmosphere escaped in glowing streams, and the crew that had once laughed at human suffering died screaming in their own language. Watched the destruction with no emotion. Justice had many forms. Sometimes it came through courts and trials. Sometimes it came through fusion fire in the cold darkness of space. 37 minutes after the battle began, the Hegemony Third Fleet ceased to exist. Of the 200 ships that had come to destroy the single human vessel, only one remained. A small scout ship that Admiral had deliberately allowed to escape. "Let them go," ordered when his tactical officer asked for permission to pursue. "Someone needs to carry word of this back to their leaders." The scout ship fled toward Hegemony space, its sensors recording everything that had happened. The crew would tell their leaders about the human warship that moved like lightning and struck like thunder. They would speak of weapons that ignored shields and turned mighty dreadnoughts into scrap metal. They would carry word that humanity was no longer a victim. Admiral stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been an enemy fleet. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, checking systems and preparing for the journey home. "Admiral," Communications Officer Park reported, "we're receiving congratulations from Earth. President wants to speak with you." "Put her through," replied. The president's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, could see crowds of people celebrating in the streets outside the presidential building. She said quietly, "The whole world watched. The whole galaxy watched. You've shown them that humanity will not be pushed around anymore." Nodded. "This was just the beginning, Madam President. Word of this battle will spread. Some species will fear us now. Others will see us as potential allies against the hegemony." And the hegemony themselves looked out at the wreckage floating in space around his ship. "They'll want revenge. This won't be the last battle." "Then we'll be ready for them," replied. "The other Hurricane-class ships will be completed soon. And there's something else. We're getting communications from dozens of species that were conquered by the hegemony. They want to know if humanity will help them fight for their freedom." Smiled grimly. "Tell them we'll consider it, but first, let's see how the galaxy reacts to what happened here today." The Tempest began its journey back to human space, leaving behind a debris field that would serve as a monument to the day humanity announced its arrival as a true power in the galaxy. The storm had passed, but its echoes would be felt throughout the stars for generations to come. News of the Third Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived under hegemony rule for centuries gathered around communication screens to watch the footage that the surviving scout ship had carried home. The images showed impossible things. A single human warship dancing through space like a living creature, destroying mighty dreadnoughts as easily as a child breaking toys. On the hegemony of Prime, Supreme Admiral L stared at the tactical recordings in his command chamber. He had watched the footage dozens of times, trying to understand how his most powerful fleet had been eliminated by a single enemy vessel. "This is not possible," he muttered to himself, his 8 arms gesturing at the holographic displays. "The laws of physics do not allow ships to move like that. Our intelligence reports said the humans were primitive." His aide, General, stood nervously beside the command throne. "Supreme Admiral, we have confirmed reports that 3 more human vessels of similar size have left their home system. They are positioning themselves near our key strongholds." L's compound eyes focused on the smaller alien with predatory intensity. "What do our scientists say about their technology?" "They believe the humans have developed some form of gravitational manipulation that allows them to ignore normal spacetime restrictions," replied carefully. "Our ships are designed to fight other ships that follow the same physical laws we do. These human vessels appear to operate under different rules entirely." The Supreme Admiral rose from his throne and walked to the massive window that looked out over the capital city. Below him, millions of hegemony citizens went about their daily lives, unaware that their empire's dominance was crumbling. "How many worlds have declared independence since the battle?" L asked. 47 systems have announced their withdrawal from hegemony control, admitted. "Most are requesting human protection. Several have offered to pay tribute to Earth instead of to us." The irony was bitter. Species that had paid tribute to the hegemony for generations were now eagerly offering the same payments to humanity. But the humans had done something the hegemony never had. They had asked for nothing and demanded nothing. They simply existed as a visible threat to anyone who might try to recreate the old system of oppression. "What about the other powers?" L asked. "The Trade Federation has recalled all of their fleets to home systems. The Crystal Collective has opened direct negotiations with the human government. The Machine Intelligence has requested permission to study human technology." Paused. "Supreme Admiral, the galactic order that existed for 3,000 years is collapsing." L nodded slowly. He had spent his entire life believing that the hegemony was the natural ruler of the galaxy. They were strong, they were numerous, and they had the most advanced technology. How could a species that had barely learned to build starships challenge that dominance? But the recordings did not lie. Admiral N's mighty fleet was now nothing but debris floating in space. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the hegemony navy, had been reduced to atoms by human weapons that seemed to channel the power of stars themselves. "Prepare the first fleet," El ordered suddenly. 500 ships, including my personal flagship. We will travel to the human and end this threat before it can grow larger. Skin changed color, a sign of extreme distress among his species. "Supreme Admiral, perhaps negotiation would be more prudent. The humans have shown they are willing to talk." "Negotiation is for equals," El snarled. "I will not negotiate with primitives who have forgotten their place in the galactic order. We will destroy and scatter their colonies. Then the galaxy will remember why the hegemony rules." 3 weeks later, the hegemony First Fleet emerged from hyperspace near Earth. 500 of the most powerful warships ever built formed a massive formation around the small blue planet that had become the center of galactic attention. Supreme Admiral El looked at Earth through the forward viewports of his flagship, the Divine Retribution. The planet looked peaceful and defensible. No massive orbital fortresses, no fleets of patrol ships, just a few space stations and what appeared to be a modest defensive force. "This will be easier than I thought," El said to his officers. "Open a communication channel to the planet's surface." President appeared on the main screen, sitting calmly in what appeared to be her office. Behind her, the flags of Earth's nations hung in dignified rows. "Supreme Admiral," she said politely, "welcome to Earth. I assume you're here about the recent unpleasantness in the Rigel system." "I am here to end your species' rebellion against the natural order," El replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to absolute obedience. "You will surrender immediately, or I will reduce your planet to ash." Smiled, and something in her expression made the alien admiral feel suddenly uneasy. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. You see, Admiral, you're not just threatening Earth. You're threatening every species in the galaxy that has decided they prefer freedom to slavery." "What are you talking about?" El demanded. "Look around," suggested gently. El turned to his sensor operators. "Full scan of local space. I want to know about every ship within 10 light minutes of this system." The readings that came back made his blood freeze. Hidden throughout the system were not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of other species. The Trade Federation had sent a battle group. The Crystal Collective had deployed their finest cruisers. Even the normally neutral machine intelligence had contributed several of their most advanced vessels. More importantly, 12 Hurricane-class warships hung in space around Earth like sleeping predators. The Tempest was there, along with ships named Cyclone, Typhoon, Maelstrom, and others whose names the translator rendered as various terms for destructive weather. "You are outnumbered," El said, though his voice carried less confidence than before. "Admiral," replied, "you came here with 500 ships to threaten one world. We have called together the representatives of 43 species who are tired of living in fear. This is not a battle between Earth and the hegemony. This is a referendum on whether the galaxy will continue to be ruled by bullies." Before El could respond, alarms began screaming throughout his flagship. The human warships had begun to move. What followed was not a battle, it was a demonstration. The Hurricane-class ships moved through the hegemony formation like ghosts, their gravitational drives allowing them to appear and disappear at will. They did not just destroy enemy vessels. They obliterated them so completely that the other alien species watching could only stare in amazement. The storm torpedoes created gravitational anomalies that crushed entire squadrons of ships at once. The fusion lances burned through armor and shields like they were made of paper. Most terrifying of all, the human vessels fought with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural, moving as if they shared a single mind. In less than an hour, the hegemony First Fleet ceased to exist. 500 ships that had taken centuries to build were reduced to glowing debris. Supreme Admiral L died when his flagship was caught in the gravitational field of 6 storm torpedoes simultaneously. When the destruction was complete, the Allied fleet stood victorious in Earth's orbit. Ships from dozens of species flew in formation with the human vessels, their crews working together in a way that had seemed impossible just days before. Ambassador Sarah stood on the bridge of the Tempest, looking out at the mixed fleet that had just changed the course of galactic history. Admiral stood beside her, watching as crews from different worlds worked together to rescue survivors from the battle. "What happens now?" asked. "Now we build something better," replied. "The old system was based on fear and oppression. The new system will be based on cooperation and mutual respect. And if other species challenge us," smiled grimly, "then they'll learn the same lesson the hegemony learned. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy, but we will not allow anyone else to rule it through force either." On planets throughout known space, beings who had lived their entire lives under alien domination watched the news reports and dared to hope. The great powers that had seemed unbeatable had been humbled by a species that most of them had never heard of just a few years before. The Galactic Trade Confederation was reformed with new rules that protected smaller species from exploitation. The tribute system was abolished. Military aggression against civilian targets became a crime punishable by the combined fleets of the Alliance. President addressed the new Galactic Assembly from the bridge of the Tempest. Her words carried to every world in known space. "Humanity did not seek this responsibility," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "We wanted only to live in peace among the stars, but we learned that peace is not possible while some beings believe they have the right to dominate others through force." She paused, her gaze steady and determined. "We are not conquerors. We do not seek to rule over other species, but we will defend the right of all beings to live free from oppression. The age of tribute and forced submission is over. The age of cooperation and mutual respect has begun." The Hurricane-class ships became symbols of this new era. They did not patrol the galaxy looking for trouble. Instead, they remained at key positions throughout known space, visible reminders that the strong could no longer prey on the weak with impunity. Years later, alien cadets at military academies throughout the galaxy studied the Battle of Rigel and the defense of Earth. They learned about the human concept of asymmetric warfare, the use of speed and maneuverability to overcome superior numbers. They studied the fusion lance technology that had made energy shields obsolete, and the storm torpedoes that could crush ships with artificial gravity. Most importantly, they learned that sometimes the salvation of the galaxy came not from its mightiest powers, but from its members. The humans had shown that courage, innovation, and determination could overcome even the most established systems of oppression. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Never again would a species be dismissed as primitive or harmless simply because they were new to the stars. Never again would civilizations be forced to pay tribute to those who claimed the right to rule through strength alone. And in the cold depths of space, the Hurricane-class warships continued their silent vigil, ensuring that the freedom so many had died to achieve would never be taken away again. The storm had passed, but its memory lived on in the peaceful skies of 1,000 worlds.